Welcome to the Home Team, the show where no matter who you root for, here you're a part of the Home Team. On today's episode, we are previewing the Week 9 slate of games in the NFL, so Sunday and Monday's games. Before we jump in, hit like, hit subscribe, share the video. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And without further ado, let's jump in. So, starting off with the morning slate of games. So, Dallas at Atlanta. Both these teams are in an interesting position. Atlanta would love to get another win in there, start to really create some distance for themselves in the NFC South. And the Cowboys could frankly just really use a win. They're coming off a loss to the 49ers. They've lost several games now where it feels like it's the same formula sort of repeating itself. They can't stop the run. They're not playing great defense on the whole. And offensively, they're very one-dimensional. Now, that being said, Dallas is still talented and has been missing some guys. However, I'm not so certain that the return of any one of those, outside of perhaps Micah Parsons, is going to be the type of thing that, majorly changes how they're going to be performing out there. It doesn't look like we're getting, or by we, it doesn't look like the Cowboys are going to be getting back Micah Parsons or DeMarcus Lawrence this week. Doesn't bode well, considering the fact that Atlanta loves to run the football, and this could be a big Bijan Robinson game as a result. The Falcons' offensive line is also playing very well on the whole, as they have been for the last several years. In terms of a path to victory for both teams, for Atlanta, this is more about being mistake-free because they're coming into this game with a team that's a bit more ready to compete right now. They're a bit more ready to just play their style of game. And as long as they don't go out there and make the silly mistakes, the pre-snap penalties, drops, interceptions, the type of things that when you do it, it lets a lesser team or a hurt team back into these games. If they don't do that, then theoretically they should be able to win this. I would say that in terms of Dallas being able to win this game, it's going to be pretty simple. They have to do what they did to start the game against the 49ers last week. 6-man box to try to stop the run. They have to sell out because clearly how they want to play is not an option. They need to commit stopping the run. At best, they have to make Atlanta one-dimensional. And then they got to get uncomfortable in terms of how they're playing coverage. You have to have guys like Trayvon Diggs. He's got to be able to man up against Drake London. You have to be able to, cover your guys like Kyle Pitts and Bijan. You have to be able to get them in a way that you normally might not want to because obviously the Falcons are, talented and loaded at the skill positions, but it's essential that Atlanta cannot run the ball on them. So 6-man front, blitz packages to force pressure against the pass, and you just got to hope that you're able to hold up and force some mistakes by the Falcons. Now, who I want to win this game, I kind of want Atlanta to win this game, partially because there is some level of comedy to the whole Dallas thing, if we're being totally honest, but also I'm ready for the surprise team to really emerge. This year, it's felt like it's been pretty, standard in terms of who the people have been or in terms of who the teams have been that are contending, and we haven't really had that team yet that's like, let me hop on and distinguish myself, and I think we could use a change of pace like that, and the Falcons seem like it's possible that it could be them. Who I think will win this game, I think it's going to be Atlanta. Dallas, it just feels like the momentum is so bad, and it feels like the Falcons are – not the Falcons, but the Cowboys are just primed to spiral. And, we saw apparently they made up in the time between last weekend and this weekend, but – we saw Trayvon Diggs after the game last week sort of snapping at reporters, and usually that's a pretty good indication that things are getting tense into place. I think Dallas is coming into this game pretty tight, and I think that Atlanta is going to be able to take advantage. All right, the Miami Dolphins at the Buffalo Bills. Now, at first blush, you would think that this is pretty simple. The Bills are playing significantly better. Their record is significantly better. And there really should be no great hope for the Dolphins to win this game. However, if we really break this down, we do have to be fair in that, Miami hasn't had Tua for most of the season. Let's also be fair when we say the rest of the Dolphins team has underperformed pretty significantly. That includes, a defense that, after losing Jalen Phillips, really struggles to get home and doesn't have a single player, really making a huge difference outside of Calais Campbell, who, given his age and given the phase of his career, I wouldn't be shocked if that's a player that we see on the move by the trade deadline, that some contending team doesn't try to come in there and add him to their rotation. I also believe that Miami does have a chance in this game, though, because this is Tua's second game back from his concussion. They're going to settle in, and usually their offense is potent enough. However, the Bills have also played very well just on the whole. In terms of how the Bills are ranked here, I mean, they're pretty middling in most categories right now, but they always seem to understand how to show up in the moment. I think that Sean McDermott's done a decent job, but I don't particularly care about how they do during the regular season, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. I believe that the Bills are a team that, much like the Cowboys, should be judged on their playoff performance. And as a result, I believe that this is the type of game that Buffalo needs to win and win dominantly for me to be impressed. I also believe that they're capable of it. Sean McDermott has a very good record against the Mike McDaniel Dolphins. I think they've only lost once. That game last year where the Bills, then OC, was obviously flipping out in the box, throwing stuff. This game is also in Buffalo. We're getting to the time of year where games that are in places like Buffalo get a little bit dicey in terms of the weather. I haven't heard anything where the weather's supposed to be awful, but I could just be misinformed given that I don't live in Buffalo. But Miami is a very different climate, and at any moment, a road game in Buffalo could be tough. Now, who I want to win this game, I want the Bills to win this game. I want the contending teams to start to separate and start to distinguish themselves. And this feels like the Bills' time to really, settle into what you are and, burst out and build momentum heading into January football. And I just don't see a way that Miami's going to be the team that derails it. I'm going to take the Bills to win this game. For Miami to win, it's really simple. This game is going to have to be Dolphins offense dominated, essentially. The Miami defense just simply is not good enough to really put the clamps on the Bills, I don't believe. And the Bills have a history of success against Miami. So this is going to take the Dolphins offense, Mike McDaniel, Tua Tagovailoa, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. They all need to have a great game. They all need to come out with some stuff that you don't normally see, and they need to be able to come out and shock the Bills. So I'm going to take the Bills to win this one ultimately. It just feels that way. And Miami sort of having to look themselves hard in the mirror and ask themselves some questions in terms of do they need to try to trade people away to acquire some pieces to build the next phase of this team, because it feels like the group they have now, it may have already hit its ceiling. Las Vegas at Cincinnati. Record-wise, you would say that this game could be competitive, wouldn't you? I don't believe it is. I will be perfectly honest with you. I mean, listen, the Raiders have come out and they managed to beat the Ravens in Baltimore. It was week 2, and I don't really take any game serious before week 3, given the way the preseason goes now. But Cincinnati is primed to stumble because they've done it multiple times. So that is all true. Do I want the Raiders to do that? Yeah, I think it'd be pretty funny. But do I think they're going to? No. I think that the Bengals are going to win this game. I think the path to victory for the Bengals is super simple. they just got to play the way they played every game at this point, which is, well, every game since week 1, which is their offense plays competent ball and carves up a bad defense. Then their defense, which it's not good, but it's gotten a little bit better, they just got to be able to hold down the Gardner Minshew Vegas offense. And if they can't do that, well, then listen, guys, Cincinnati, they got other problems. So I'm going to take the Bengals to win this game because it should be pretty straightforward. If they can't win a game like this, I think it's time that we, stick a fork in the Bengals. Chargers at Cleveland. This feels like one of those games that's going to be pretty physical from two teams that want to play physical. Obviously, Jameis Winston is getting the start at quarterback for the Browns again with Deshaun Watson out for the season. And I think that gives this game something interesting, given that Jameis Winston, no matter what the situation, no matter who the receiver is on the other end of it, Jameis Winston is going to throw that ball down the field. And even when, you would think of Cleveland right now with no Amari Cooper anymore after trading him to the Bills, and Nick Chubb is back, so you would think that, all right, we're focusing more on the ground and pound, and then we can go play action, rip those balls in behind the linebackers, stuff like that. Jameis Winston has a tendency to just heat it. So the Chargers need to be on their P's and Q's defensively and never get laxed, because if they do, it's just as likely that ball turns into a touchdown as it is that they pick it. And that's the roller coaster of Jameis Winston. He's going to give the Chargers opportunities to catch these balls and turn them into interceptions. And that right there is the Chargers' most definitive path to victory, in my opinion. To me, the Chargers, they win in a very specific way. They run the ball. They basically do exactly what I described for the Browns. Run the ball, great play action, and then physical, hard defense. And I think that's what makes this game interesting. It's two teams that want to play this way, and the battle of the trenches is going to be essentially what defines it. I also believe that Justin Herbert is settling in to this offense and what it's going to be, and he started to play really, really well these last couple of weeks. So there is also that element to it. And I believe that come next year in particular for the Chargers, I'd be very excited because I do believe that they're going to address the issue of wide receiver this offseason, and that could make the Chargers a very, very dangerous team, where right now they're a little more one-dimensional in what they're capable of. I believe the future is super bright. However, the future does not affect right now. And I am going to take the Chargers to win this game because I believe that they're going to capitalize on those 2 or 3 chances that Jameis Winston is going to give them, and that they are going to go into Cleveland and get that game done. I don't believe that this is going to be a blowout. I believe that guys like Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt, those 2 tackles that have played exceptionally this year for the Chargers, this is their toughest test. Myles Garrett, Zadarius Smith, this is going to be a game where if those 2 guys are having a bad time, the Chargers offense could be having a bad time. And I think that ultimately that's where this is going to be won and lost. Offensive line, defensive line. I believe that the Chargers offensive line can win this game. I believe that the Chargers defensive line can win this game. And I believe Jameis Winston is just as capable of giving it away as he is of winning it. So I believe that the Chargers go into Cleveland and get it done. New England at Tennessee. The game nobody really wants to watch, if we're being perfectly honest. However, there is some intrigue in this. Number one, these teams that are bad, we're at the point where the fan bases are starting to think about things like, do we want to win this game? Does it actually benefit our team to win this game? And this is a game where that becomes very, very true, because both of these 2 teams are certainly competing to be at the very, very top of the league or of the draft. And if I was to tell you which team's actually been worse this year, the Patriots offense is ranked 32nd and their defense is ranked 25th. The Titans offense is 31st and the defense is 26th. So Patriots offense, worse than Titans offense by 1 spot. Patriots defense, better than Titans defense by 1 spot. So ultimately, these are 2 teams that are ranked 30th and 31st overall. This is by Pro Football Focus. And I believe that, this is going to be a game with some sloppy ball, if we're being perfectly honest. But the intrigue comes for me in that Drake May is going to be back in this game. And there's a pretty decent chance, given how he's played, that he could look impressive against the Titans. And that's with the fact that Patriots receivers absolutely insist on dropping any ball that comes their way. Do I believe that the Titans can punch back? You bet they can. But I see, as somebody who likes the Patriots, I actually want Tennessee to win this game because I believe the best thing for the Patriots is that ultimately, you know, they have a higher pick to get a great receiver. And I want Tennessee to win this game just because I think that these are going to be two teams where this tiebreaker is going to be huge for that. However, I actually think New England is going to win this game. And I think that Drake May is actually going to look pretty good against Tennessee, given that he was having some success against the Jets before he went out with the concussion, but he had a great ball that was dropped. He was running the ball well, and he just, you know, it just didn't go his way in terms of the injury. But I think that if you can look good against the teams that Drake May has looked competent against, Tennessee is very possible that if he's just in there the whole time, they're going to have at least 3 or 4 drives that end in points. And I think that that might be enough to beat the Titans. So I'm going to take the Patriots to beat the Tennessee Titans. The Denver Broncos at the Baltimore Ravens. This is a sneaky good game. Very sneaky good game. Obviously, let's start with the Ravens. They're coming off a disappointing loss last week to the Cleveland Browns, right? We all know that. Does that mean that the Ravens are bad? No. It means that just like every team in the league, they're vulnerable and they can have moments where they lose, right? The biggest difference and the biggest, equalizer in this game is the quality of the Broncos defense. And Denver's now coming off several wins. They started off 0-2. They're now 5-3. And I think that ultimately, the Broncos are a team that is finding their stride offensively, but defensively is completely locked in, and that's where this game is really going to be won. I believe that the Ravens defense likely has an advantage over the Denver offense. Denver's going to have its moments, I think, where they're going to be able to surge up, get some points, things like that. But I don't believe this is going to be a game where the Broncos offense goes wild. The Broncos defense and the Ravens offense, that's where it's going to be. If the Broncos can stop the run in particular, they are the best pass defense in the NFL. Patrick Surtain's the best corner in the NFL. They have several players that are graded very highly in that secondary. And ultimately, their defensive line, while not having a single standout guy in terms of name value, they're a team that, as a collective unit, plays really, really strongly together and can wreak some havoc along the Ravens' offensive line. In terms of how these teams win this game, I think it's really, really simple. Who's able to have their way in terms of running the ball? If the Broncos defense can stop them running the ball, I think they win this game. Because I don't believe Baltimore is going to have a lot of success passing if they're not able to run. And I don't believe that Denver's going to have much success defending anything if they can't stop the run. So I think that's where this game's going to be won and lost. Who do I think wins this game? I'm going to take the Baltimore Ravens. I don't think they're going to run wild, but I think they're going to do enough that, they're going to put up enough points that this young Denver offense and Bo Nix, they're just not quite able to hang with it. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game, somewhere like low 20s for the Ravens, high teens for the Broncos, and ultimately Baltimore gets it done at home. Washington, the Commanders at the New York Giants. Oh, by the way, who do I want to win that game? I want the Broncos to win that game. Sorry, my bad. I want the Broncos to win that game, but I think Baltimore will. Okay. Washington at the Giants. This is one where we aren't going to have as much analysis to it, if I'm being completely honest with you. We'll mention what happened last week for each of these teams. Washington obviously wins on that Hail Mary. I don't think that that's anything to particularly write home about. I don't think that that is the most impressive aspect of what happened last week. The most impressive aspect of what happened last week for the Commanders is that, A, their defense did a great job against Caleb Williams and the Bears offense. And then, B, that outside of the red zone, the Commanders' offense was having a lot of success against a very good Bear defense. And I think that that's more impressive than we won on a Hail Mary because that's more tangible, that's more repeatable. The New York Giants, this is a team that does not do a whole lot very impressively. Malik Neighbors is a great player, and the Giants' defensive front, particularly Dexter Lawrence, are very good. But outside of that, the Giants don't bring much. I want Washington to win this game, and I think they're going to, and I don't think this is going to be particularly close, if I'm being completely honest. I think at some point, if you're the Giants, you have to start considering whether you bench Daniel Jones for the year for a very simple reason. He has injury guarantees in that contract that would make it more difficult for them to move him or release him without having a very big penalty for doing so. And this is a business. And they know that he's not their guy. And I think that we're reaching that time of the year where the Giants are going to have to start making some tough choices. And I think Washington beating them will be a factor that expedites those decisions. New Orleans at Carolina, another brutal one. The Saints, big losing streak, started off 2-0, and they have fallen to 2-6 since then against the Carolina Panthers, who are 1-7, I believe it is. Right? Or has Carolina had a bye yet? I forget. These are two teams where I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not able to track. I don't track everything every single week with these two. Yes, 1-7 for the Panthers. And then for the Saints, we have, 2-6. So they both have played all 8 games. And I think that for the Saints in particular, that bye week can't come soon enough because, my God, do they need people back. That is unfortunately the biggest factor with the Saints is injuries really have become a problem for the Saints. And you hate to see it because, it can end the season of a team that would otherwise be pretty good and pretty competent. But ultimately, it appears that they could get a bit of a boon this week, given that looks like Derek Carr is expected to start this week. They got guys like Chris Olave back. And against a team like Carolina, who cover your ears, Panthers fans, are just abysmal on defense and are really just abysmal on offense, too. Their offense is ranked 29th and their defense is 22nd. So they are as bad as it gets outside of defensively. The only guy in that defense is playing well is J.C. Horn, and he has a history of getting hurt. So I believe that ultimately this could be a sneaky blowout game with the Saints' relative return to health, where I want the Saints to win this game because, frankly, if either New Orleans or Tampa Bay is just wiped out by injuries completely, the NFC South is pretty much already over. And at this point in the year, that's pretty boring. So I kind of hope the Saints win and at least provide themselves an opportunity to surge. And I think they will, but I'm not sure that it's going to matter. All right, on to the afternoon games. Jacksonville at Philadelphia. Jacksonville coming off a heartbreaker to Green Bay, lost at the very end after a big comeback. And then Philly off a big win in Cincinnati. Philadelphia's path to victory in this one's pretty easy. Just run the ball. I think that when they are depending on Jalen Hurts to win these games, they are in a bad place. He's not 2022 is the aberration year. And I know that that's not something Eagles fans like to hear, but I also think that Eagles fans are sort of settling into that idea that 2022 was the high water mark, and that where he usually is somewhere about a level or two below that, which is still good. He's a good player. He's competent. But when you're trying to win and lose these games all on his arm, it's not where you want to live if you're the Eagles. But, against Jacksonville, I think there's a good chance that they're going to be able to just run the ball, because Jacksonville, frankly, they're not a team that does a whole lot of things very well. Defensively, they're 19th. Offensively, they're 19th. So they're right in like the low middle in every single aspect, which is why they've lost a couple of close games and why their 2-6 record is a little misleading. However, it is earned. And in terms of the Eagles, they're sort of the opposite in a lot of ways, where for the Eagles, their offense is 10th and their defense is actually ranked pretty well, being up in the top 10. So they are a team that's like high end in terms of a lot of their grades, but they've also won a lot of games, and their 5-2 record is a little misleading. I don't think there's a huge gap between these two teams in terms of how they usually play, but I think there's a huge gap in these teams in terms of understanding how to win. I also don't believe that coaching is a big edge for either of these teams. I think that the biggest advantage here comes from the fact that Philly has more of an identity and they know what they want to be, whereas Jacksonville is leaning too much on Trevor Lawrence to do things that really we're learning that no quarterback in this league can do. You know, the only quarterbacks in this league that when everything is put on them, it goes well. I mean, normally it's Patrick Mahomes. This year, he's not having that type of year, and the Chiefs' defense is really driving their success. But historically, it's Patrick Mahomes. Josh Allen's another one. And then Lamar Jackson. And then Joe Burrow's able to do it, except for the fact that their defense is just so awful that it's not mattering. Outside of those type of guys, you need the infrastructure with the rest of the team to play well. You need the run game. You need a defense. You need all these things, and that's not there in Jacksonville. They're asking Trevor Lawrence to do a lot of stuff. And listen, Brian Thomas is a great player. Trevor Lawrence is, I would say, he's at the higher end of the middle group of quarterbacks, where if the rest of the team was good, I don't think you'd have a problem. I actually believe him and Jalen Hurts are pretty comparable in a lot of ways, but Jalen Hurts just has a way better environment. And as a result, the Eagles are going to win this game. As much as I would love for Jacksonville to come into Philadelphia and win, I just don't see it happening. Chicago at Arizona. The Bears obviously coming off losing that Hail Mary game. And then Arizona coming off of they won, right? Yeah, Arizona. They had to have won. I feel like they did. Yeah, they beat Miami. Yeah, 27-28. Arizona's 4-4, and a bit of a surprise at 4-4. Now some of the games feel, a little, I guess you could say, lucky. However, when Arizona continues to just, play feisty and keep these games close, it's not shocking that as they've progressed as a team, some of those are becoming wins. So I think that we all just sort of struggle to wrap our arms around them because they're the Cardinals, but they're a shockingly feisty team. Then you have the Bears, who defensively are very strong, and offensively, much like the Broncos, they are progressing and evolving. They took a bit of a step back last week against Washington, but on the whole, for about 3 weeks before that, they've been really trending upwards. I would say that the best unit in this game is the Bears defense, and that they have a really good chance to stifle the Cardinal offense, and that they're going to need to. The Cardinals defense is interesting because they have some players, particularly someone like Buda Baker, who's playing really well. But other than that, they don't have a whole lot of all-stars on that team on the defensive side of the ball. Whereas, the Bears have several guys like Jalen Johnson, I'd say probably their best defender. Montez Sweat's also very good. Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards are both good linebackers. They're not elite linebackers, but they're good linebackers. And then Kevin Byard is still playing at a high level at safety. In terms of the offense, obviously, the Bears have a lot of names that some of them aren't quite playing up to where you want, but they're still talented. Where, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Roma Dunze are the receivers. Cole Kmet's there. Caleb Williams is evolving as a quarterback. Started off the year pretty slow, but he's sort of settling in outside of that Washington game. And then for the Cardinals offensively, Kyler Murray's great. James Conner's very good. Trey McBride is an underrated top 5 tight end. Marvin Harrison is quietly playing well. And then Paris Johnson has actually grown into being a very good tackle. So the path to victory for both teams is pretty simple. their offense needs to show up. I think that I would like Chicago to win, and I think Chicago is for a very simple reason. The Cardinal offense has a tougher test than the Bears offense. And if the Bears were to lose this game, this tells us more about what they're not yet, more than what Arizona is. Because I think that Chicago's built the type of team that should win this game. If they lose this game, now we're starting to once again talk about Matt Eberflus on the hot seat. And I think that that's where we're at. Arizona's fully capable of winning this game just because of their offense. And if Kyler Murray decides to have one of those games where he just goes nuclear, they probably will. But I'm going to take the Bears in a close, gritty game. The Detroit Lions at the Green Bay Packers. Interesting game. I'm hearing that Jordan Love is supposed to start, which I don't know if that's going to help or hinder the Packers. Depends on really if he's good. It feels like nobody on the Packers is doing the smart thing, which is telling him to sit down and then go through this game in the bye week and really get healthy, because he's had 2 lower body injuries now. And that's scary, given where the Packers want to go. They need him long-term, not short-term. I understand this is a game with the Detroit Lions. They really want this game. And if they lose this game, there's a chance that the gap between them and the Lions becomes too big to clear. But it scares me. If he really is good, then fine. But part of me believes that if this was not the Detroit Lions, he does not play this game. And I think that if that's the way that you're going about things, then, you're in a dangerous place. But ultimately, I won't lie to you, I trust the Packers organization. They make a lot of good decisions. Matt LaFleur is a very good coach. And so I will trust that Jordan Love is good. Do I think that that's going to be enough? Could be. They played them tough last year. But the momentum feels very different. The path to victory for both teams is really simple. Who plays better on defense? This could be the type of game where if Green Bay is schematically doing things really strongly, the Detroit Lions pass rush without Aiden Hutchinson could start to show itself as a weakness. And the Lions might be asked to get outside of themselves and start finding new ways to create pressure. And I think that could potentially exposed maybe the one weakness of the Lions, which is not so much their total secondary, because both their safeties are very good. Brian Branch in particular is great. But the cornerbacks of the Lions are suspect. And I think if Green Bay can put themselves into a situation where they are able to force the Lions to put those corners on an island, that's where the Packers could have their success. Granted, running the ball is going to be important as well. However, I think that given the health questions about Jordan Love, the Lions might be very willing to oblige the Packers into putting themselves into that situation where they might want to see where Jordan Love is at. They might want to put him into a position where he has to test himself and potentially compromise himself. And I think that ultimately that could be where this game is won. Can the Packers passing game capitalize against the Lions cornerbacks? And can those Detroit safeties play well enough, to limit the big plays and fix any mistakes made by those corners? And can Jordan Love hold up? I think that's the big thing here. I think the Lions offense and the Green Bay defense, let's be real about it, the Lions offense has an advantage, because I would say that they have an advantage against pretty much every team that they face. And outside of one game in recent years, the Packers defense has not had a whole lot of joy against the Lion offense. So I think that ultimately you're going to see a good game from the Detroit offense, and that a huge part of Green Bay being able to limit the points is going to be how long their offense can stay on the field and how long they can give their defense a break and to review and coach and make the in-game changes that they're going to need to make to contend with Detroit. So I want the Lions to win this game because I think me, like many people, are enjoying the Lions, and I think that they're going to win as well. I think that they're just a little bit better than Green Bay at everything. I think Green Bay could definitely make it close, and given that it's in Green Bay, they could certainly win this game. But I am going to take the Detroit Lions. All right, LA Rams at the Seattle Seahawks. Ooh, see, the Rams are one of the few teams in this league that we don't have a great grasp of, mostly because they've spent most of the year not being healthy, and I think that what we know is that they're well coached. They have a young defensive team like a young defensive front that with Jared Verse in particular is looking good, but we don't know fully what they look like because they've always been playing at a disadvantage. With Puka back, with Cooper Kupp back, we're starting to see the Rams. And they're a really smart team, like they always have been. They are the team that, as a 49ers fan, I'm not scared of the Seattle Seahawks or the Arizona Cardinals. The team in the NFC West that scares me most is the Rams. And I think that Seattle, we know what they are. They're a team that's a little hot and cold offensively. Their running game is really inconsistent. And defensively, they're good against the bad teams, but the good teams carve them up. So ultimately what I think is going to happen here is exactly that. They're going to try to run the ball, but the young front of the Rams is going to be hungry and will eat it up. They'll have their moments of explosive plays, but ultimately Seattle will probably land somewhere in the low 20s to high teens in terms of their points. However, that Rams offense is going to wake up. And while I want really neither of these teams to win, if I'm being frank, I hope this game ends in a tie. But I believe that the Rams are going to go to Seattle and win this game. I think the Rams are the team that could surge. And we're looking at two NFC West teams, I think, that could surge. Health is going to be the factor for both the Rams and Niners. They both have had players that are dropping, but they're both reaching a point for San Francisco with the bye week and for the Rams with just after getting hammered early in the season, their guys are starting to get back. And I think that we're about to see the Rams make a real push for the playoffs. Indy at Minnesota. Ooh, obviously Anthony Richardson is not playing this game. There's a million reasons that go into that, but ultimately I believe that that is the best thing for the Colts in the short term. For the long term, probably not. However, Minnesota's coming off back-to-back losses and could really, use a win, essentially. And I think with this game being on prime time and at home, I think that this is a great opportunity for them to just wake up and remind everybody how dangerous they are, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. If they were to lose this game, that would tell me a lot more about the Vikings than it does the Colts, because I believe the Colts' ceiling is pretty well defined. And that ultimately Indianapolis is going to make this a feisty game, but it's not going to be enough. I want Minnesota to win this game, and I think they will, because the NFC North is turning into one hell of a race. And I would love to see it continue that way, where even though we have these elite teams, we're in a lot of other divisions that would be locked up, we're going to see this one come down to the end. And let's bring it on. So Monday Night Football, last game here, people. Tampa Bay at Kansas City. All right. Buccaneers at Chiefs. If Tampa Bay was healthy, this game would be a lot more interesting. But they still don't have Mike Evans. They obviously are without Chris Godwin the rest of the way. This is not a game that's going to require a ton of analysis, unfortunately. Without those two guys, I think the Chiefs' defense is going to feast. They're going to stop the run, and they're going to make those backup Tampa Bay receivers they're going to make them try to beat guys like Trent McDuffie in one-on-one coverage. And I don't think it's going to happen. I think ultimately I want Tampa Bay to win this game. Me, like everybody else, it's fun to root against Kansas City, right? Like, let's all be real with what it is. We all love to see that great team fall. And Kansas City and Chiefs fans, you are a great team. You are an amazing team, an amazing franchise. And everybody rooting against you is what you should want. And I will fully admit that I'm in that bandwagon. I'm a full-on hater, so I'll take that. But that just because I'm rooting against them does not mean I think it's going to happen. And I believe Kansas City is going to win this game, especially at home and on primetime. So that wraps it up. There's two teams on a bye, Pittsburgh and the Niners. And other than that, that covers everything. So thanks so much for tuning in. Hope everybody has a great day of football. Hope everybody's team comes out healthy. Everybody's happy. And, everyone have a great weekend. Thanks so much for tuning in. Peace.